Thank you for spending some time with me today, whatever your time zone is. Some of you having lunch, some of you finishing breakfast. Welcome, and I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad I can share this time with you today. So I'd actually like to start very briefly with just a very brief guided meditation, just to ground and center all of our energies in the midst of our busy day. So if you can do that with me, just kind of putting your body where it needs to be. If you're sitting in a chair, just really noticing the way you're seated in that chair, making sure that your sit bones are fully on the chair and that your hands and your arms and your legs are just very relaxed and loose and receptive. And if you want to take a minute just to close your eyes and take a nice deep breath. Watching any tension in your face or the top of your head. Just taking a moment to connect with your third eye. And really asking of yourself and the universe to open up your intuitive centers. And be present for this lovely hour of self-care that you're doing for yourself. And if you feel free to put in the chat, put in maybe an intention or thought, a word in terms of how you're thinking about the next hour, what would you like to learn, or where you would like to deepen your tarot practice. I'd love to see that. And you can do that now at any time as we get started. So today we are going to have a very brief PowerPoint. I'm going to talk a little bit about around the actual act of reading, and then we're going to get into some readings together as a group. So this, if you are used to learning tarot in a very traditional way, where you're basically just memorizing keywords and spreads, you're going to find today is going to be very different. And we'll get into it. Let me get into my PowerPoint here. So yes, developing tarot fluency, guidance, clarity, openness, court cards, abundance, depth, clarity. Now that's an interesting word, clarity. When I have clients make an appointment with me, they have to do an intake form. And one of the questions is, what are you hoping to get out of the session? 90% of the time, the word clarity is used. And the second word that's used, these two words, almost always one of these two words ends up being in that response to me. The first one is clarity. The second one is hope. And I think it's really interesting. Why the word clarity and not truth? I don't know the answer, but I offer that to you to think about. But it's a word that's often used. And I think that's going to go right into what we've got going on right now. So let me take you to my brief little PowerPoint, and I will upload this as a PDF later so you can have it in the chat box. Can everybody see this okay? Okay, great. So let's get into it. Read tarot like a pro. My name is Jenna Matlin. I'm a psychic tarot reader and medium. I have been a full-time tarot professional since 2012, but I picked up my first deck in 1990, and I read part-time ad hoc over the years until I finally decided to go full-time. I've been hired by corporate organizations. I was awarded best spiritual guru of 2019 and from Philadelphia Magazine. And that was right before I moved down to North Carolina. I was like, thanks. And then I left. I have a book out, which is really the primary reason, I've got to show my book, guys. And my book was out in November by Llewellyn called Will You Give Me a Reading? What You Need to Read Tarot with Confidence. And you can pick that up on Llewellyn. It's a nice book. If it's not just about the keywords and the spread. It's about all the things that happen to support that magic to happen. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You can go to my website. I offer classes and workshops. Of course, I do readings. I do galleries on Zoom or in person. So please connect with me if we've not connected. I'd love to. I'd love that. So the first thing I want to talk about is I kind of want to talk about some old wives' tales, because the thing is none of us come to tarot readings from a completely blank slate. And our approach to reading tarot is informed often by what we think tarot is. What is tarot? Who are you as a reader? Who's the writer? How does time work? What do you think is actually going on here? And what might be some beliefs that you have around tarot or the act of reading tarot that may or may not be helpful? So feel free if you have these like myths that you've heard, or I've heard somewhere that I'm supposed to do this or I'm supposed to do that, put it in the chat box, because I want to clarify anything that may feel superstitious or limiting to you in terms of your practice. Or you can say, this works for me. And I'm going to say, cool, it works for you. But I've often noticed that we may come to tarot from a place where we're taught something that it may not actually be helpful for us. Okay, great. So Tamara, I hope I'm saying that where the inflection where it needs to be, that you have to charge your deck. Perfect. That's definitely like an old wives' tale or like a mythology that may or may not be useful. Never read when you're alone. Don't do more than one reading every 6 months. You can't read at night. Wow, that's a new one. I hadn't heard that one. Is it true that cards should be charged? Negative energies, moon energies, treat the deck as though they pick up all the energy, tarot and unwanted spirits. Wow, this is great, guys. We're off to a good start. You must be gifted your decks. You have to buy a deck that you vibe with, not just any deck. This is so great. I can't wait some of this is ones I have never heard of. Some of them I've also heard of is don't let other people touch your deck. Only you can touch your deck. Has anyone heard that one?
Yes.
Tarot does not answer yes or no questions. Has anyone heard that one? You should not charge for your readings. Opens the door to the devil, right? We heard that already. You can only learn tarot from a tarot master. You must use spreads. You must use reversals, so on and so forth. And I'm here to tell you that everything that's been shared in the chat and everything I've just said, none of it's true. None of it's true. And I can tell you that because I know a ton of readers. And I know readers who spill beer on their tarot decks at parties. And I've also seen people just pull their deck out of the box and get going with it. And so I think we can make rules for ourselves that make sense for us. But I have noticed over the years that when I've had those rules, they've changed over time. There really is no hard or fast rule. So don't feel bad because you're not facing east at dawn with your tarot reading. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of superstition around tarot because tarot was created in the 1400s as a game. And then it has been kind of co-opted and adopted by one spiritual tradition after another, where that spiritual tradition was maybe slapped onto tarot, but that's not intrinsically tarot. And that tarot actually has a really incredible magic, but it's not any of these one things. So truly, it does not matter if someone touches the deck, if you buy your own deck, that you have to buy a deck that you vibe with. That's an interesting one because I've had decks that I like looking at and I think they're really cool looking, but then when I read for them, it doesn't work for me. And I've had other decks where I'm like, it's okay. The art's okay. I don't really love the deck, but then it works for me. And what that is, I'm not quite sure yet. I'm working on figuring out what the theory is around that. But you'll be surprised in your tarot journey how things will shift and change over time. Now, the idea that tarot will call in bad entities or the devil, I think there's some confusion there because tarot is not necessarily like a Ouija board. And tarot is not the gateway to evil because tarot is not evil. And I'll tell you why. Tarot was built and created out of Catholicism of the medieval times. And so I ask you, if tarot was evil, why would the devil card in tarot be a bad guy? Is that the devil telling him on himself, right? So what we actually see is a story in tarot, and the story is about going to heaven. That is the story of tarot. And when you look through the major arcana, you see it. So if anything, I would say that tarot really connects with mystical Catholicism and mystical Christianity more than anything else and more than any other divination system out there. So I think we can let that go in terms of like it being a doorway gateway. I have certainly never seen it do that. And if anything, I've seen it be relentlessly helpful and good for people and never scary. So yeah, take those myths and just like throw them away. We don't even need them. They're not even relevant. And they may actually, make your practice of reading tarot more limited than it really needs to be. So what does it mean to be a confident reader? Like the number one reason, and you guys could put this in the chat too, what do you think would make you confident or why you're not confident? The number one reason why people never get to like a high proficiency in terms of reading tarot is because they always cite, well, I just lack confidence. And here's the thing, confidence happens after you do a bunch of readings. It is the gift or the reward. It is not the thing you need to get started on. And in fact, we're looking at the wrong metric when it means to be a good reader or to be a confident reader. So first, we just need to throw that out the window. Like, we don't want to wait for you to be confident to begin reading. And what we want to do, though, is support you so that you can read in a way that then will build confidence over time.
That's a good one.
So, yeah. So as everyone is starting to put their comments in the comment box, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think are truly the three biggest pillars in terms of being a really good and solid reader. And those aren't really tarot related. Those are boundaries, empathy, and like how you handle criticism. So with boundaries, we're going to get into that like a little more deeply later on. But the idea of what is really my responsibility here? What can I really do for this other person? What am I agreeing that I'm doing here? And how am I showing up in a way that really makes me feel more safe And how am I creating safety for the people that I'm reading for? We also need empathy, and that's not the same as being empathic. To be an empath, it's a psychic style where you're taking on and feeling their feelings. And you could be an empath and be a terrible reader. And I've seen that where people go, oh my God, that person came in and her energy, just like it got to me and it freaked me out and I didn't want to read for her. That's not empathy. You're still making it kind of about you. But when we talk about empathy, it's really about understanding with compassion that other person's situation, because we want to come from a place of service. Empathy takes us out of ourselves, where it's not all about us and our responses. It's about centering the person that we're reading for. And that is what leads to more confidence as a reader. And then finally, how you handle criticism. If you are a perfectionist, if you are afraid of ever making a mistake, then you will never be a very good reader. Because in life, we make mistakes, don't we? We have to. That's how you learn. And so if we're afraid of ever making mistakes, if we're afraid of ever hearing feedback, even if that feedback is unfair, then we cannot make that leap that's required to be able to read fluently and from a relaxed place. Now, that doesn't mean that we should never hear feedback that's helpful, even when it's hard. We absolutely should. But we want to come at it as there's an issue here. What went wrong? Did I misinterpret something? Did I mishear something? Or am I saying it in a way that they're not understanding? Versus, I just suck and I will never be a good reader. And I think that's the difference. And I think that's true for reading cards or anything that we do. So I'm going to come through some of these chats. Worried that you'll get it wrong. Fear of being wrong. You don't know how to start. Some cards still stump you. Fear that people are not receptive. And get mad at you. Yeah. So let's talk about that fear of being wrong. What if the goal is to not be right, but to be helpful? What if you make that your goal? My goal is to not be necessarily right in terms of the final outcome. Because when we read tarot, that's another unexamined belief is, how do you think time works? I'm going to tell you how I think time works, at least in tarot, that it's less about a train on a track, which is you're telling them what's at the end of the track. And then if you're wrong, they're going to come and tell you you're wrong. But we can approach this from this idea of that me and tarot, we are like the ghost of Christmas future. And that we're going to show you a future that then you have free will to impact upon, right? So if we look at it from that lens, the accuracy of the final outcome is not even as heavy or as important as it is the journey to either get to that final outcome that we like or avoid the final outcome that we don't like, and listening to the messages along the way. So if we come at it from that framework, it becomes less about being right or wrong and more about advice, ways forward, and the actual clarity that everybody wants, right? So some cards still stump you. Yeah, I would definitely say look at those cards, because you being stumped in those cards has to do with something about your journey in some way. And that is a big question. I definitely want to, that's outside of like where I'm going exactly today. But I would say really dive very, very deeply in those cards that you're stumped by. Fear that people are not receptive to the truth. Yeah. That people may not be. And people getting mad at you. Yes, people can and will shoot the messenger, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing though. we have to be okay with that. So again, that's that like dealing with criticism, because I cannot tell you how many times people have said like, everything you said was wrong and you suck and I hate all of this. And then they leave and give me 1-star review. And then I hear from them 4, 6, 12 months later telling me I was right. But at the end of the day, it's not really me, it's tarot. And I'm just trying to convey what tarot is saying. So it's not really me that they're mad at. They're mad because there's some resistance to whatever it has been said. And the more I don't make it about me, the easier I can let that go. Yeah, we are kind of a channel. I believe that. The more I'm able to get my ego out of the way to allow the message of tarot to come through, I think just the better everything goes. Is that helpful for everybody? Kind of going through it? Yes, no, maybe so. Promise or repeat? Okay. Because the thing is, when we're talking about fluency as a tarot reader, if you're treating your readings so preciously and you're treating you so preciously, then you're never going to get to the numbers of readings that you need to get to the muscle memory you need for truly psychic and intuitive hits to occur. So all of what I'm saying here is to help pull aside that ego so that we're really in the flow of a process that's often much greater than us. And so let's talk a little bit about the tarot experience. That we have ourself, we have the cards, we have the querent. That should say the self, not center self. I don't. So let's talk about some like basics as we start going, whether you're very, very new to tarot or you've been, around the block a few times. Number one, don't panic. The most important thing, don't panic. If you're looking at the cards and you have no idea what's happening, when we want to slow down. And when we're reading for somebody, they will always want us to speed up. Like I will have literally had people go, what does the card say? And I'm like, just inhaling to talk, right? So their anxiety or worry means that often out of a place of anxiety, they want to control the session or they want it to be fast. But you as the reader, you need to control the pace that works for you. The other thing to keep in mind is when you're doing a reading, we do want to try to come to a story with a beginning, middle, and end, and that there is a clear ending in the reading that we're conveying. Analog Google. Tarot is not the analog version of Google. The only thing we have any entitlement to is the question that we ask. How the universe decides to answer that question is completely out of our control. Sometimes readings will be hyper detailed. Sometimes they're the more wide angled lens. And what I've learned over time is that spirit gives us the message that we need right then in a way that really helps us. And that goes to Christmas future kind of thing, actually get to the life that we want to live. So I'll give you a quick example. When people are looking for love, and that's always isn't that always the common question? I will see often that the cards are relentlessly not giving that person the level, the detail that person wants. And I've come to realize it's because if we give them that detail, they will ignore everything else that the reading said and just focus on the detail. But when they do that, then they're going to miss it because they didn't actually do the other things that were part of the reading. Case in point, I had a client come back to me and say, Jenna, you were wrong. You said your reading said someone was coming in April. Well, it's May 1st. There's no one who came in April. And I'm going, okay, but did you do the other things like A, B, C, D? Oh, no. Well, then that's why. So oftentimes the reading will show up in a way of saying, we're not going to give you the Google question because the process is so important. You need to really be centered in that. So sometimes as a reader, you may also be frustrated, but I want you to look at the question or the answer that arises and goes, There may be a reason why it's saying it this way. Does that make sense, everybody? Finally, if you draw a blank, don't panic and just describe what you see going on in the card. That's where you start. So in terms of the cards, shuffling, shuffle them any way you want. There's no right or wrong way to do that. Touching, you can touch them. You can have your querent touch them or not touch them. It's up to you. There's no wrong or right way to do that. Choosing, some people, after they shuffle, they'll just pull the card off the top of the deck. Other people, like myself, I fan all the cards out and then run my hands over the top of them to sense which cards want to kind of be picked. There's no right or wrong way to that. Function over form. Now, this is a big rookie mistake that oftentimes people don't think about. Does the spread actually ask the question that the person is asking? For example, someone says, another love, like, will I meet someone to get married, to this year? And then you go, oh, that's a good question. Okay.
No,
and then
it's
you go,
not.
let's do a past, present, future, right? One card in past, one card in present, one card in future. Well, that's not actually answering their question, is it? We don't care about the past. We don't care about the present. We just want to know about this future love. So why would we choose a spread like that? If you do spreads, you want to choose a spread that's really answering the question that they're asking. And then ignore reversals. I don't read reversals every time. It really depends on, does it make sense in the story being told in the reading here? And if you don't like reversals or you're not advanced, just ignore them completely. You're still going to get a good reading. Here's the thing, like it's like Jurassic Park, where like life finds a way. Tarot finds a way too. And that you can break your deck, you can do all kinds of crazy things to it, and it somehow finds a way to get the message across. Again, don't treat your deck like it's made of glass. Don't treat the readings like they're precious. Tarot and you are far more robust and way more dynamic than that. So when we get to the place of reading for another person, and I truly believe that if you're a new reader, what I teach is don't read for yourself. Absolutely not. You have to read for everyone else first. And I'll explain that why. I'll explain why I'm saying that later. But let's just say for now, if we're reading for the querent and they're sitting down, we want to just listen to them. Like sometimes we may jump to some conclusion about what we think that they want, and in our own minds, and we have to stop that. We don't need to run to start thinking about what we're going to say. We really want to hear where they're at and what they would like to know. And sometimes they don't actually know, or they're confused. So we can help them in that process of finding a question that really, really works. We also want to meet them where they are. Like one of my big pet peeves is when I see readers, like say a querent sits down and goes, I'm really worried I'm going to make rent this month. I was laid off. I'm like freaking out. I've got these things am I going to make rent? And then the reader goes, let's talk about your scarcity. And I'm like, no, like, let's talk about rent. That's what they want to do. That's what they want to know. So we cannot act like we're better than them, or we know. We want to meet them where they are, because that's what it means to be of service. We also you just want to read what you see. Read what you see. And what I mean by that is sometimes we may have a bias or an opinion because we think we know, and that may not be in the deck. If it's not in the deck, we have to be very, very clear. So what I do is when I have a speculation or something that's just my own and not the reading, I'm very clear in letting that other person know, hey, this isn't in the reading. It's just my speculation. Are you okay to hear that? And I want to make sure I get their consent, because I've heard lots of people complain about readers who go, I don't know if I got a reading or if it was just her opinion. So we have to watch that. What's your opinion? What's your bias? What's your trigger versus what you're actually seeing in the reading? Spit it out. Sometimes we don't let it out because we're over monitoring our words, and that self-consciousness gets in the way. So we want to just spit it out. Even if it doesn't always make sense to us, it may make sense to them, or it may make sense later. Because if we're not spitting it out, we're trying to put it in a speculation that may then make it wrong. And I'll give you a quick story around that. My father-in-law at the time had lung cancer, and it was in the summer. And in the summer, I had an image of deep snow. This was when I was living in the Philadelphia area. And so I told my husband at the time, I think we have 6 months, but I was totally wrong. If you guys remember the freak snowstorm that happened in Thanksgiving of 2015, those of you in the Philly area, that's the day he died. And I couldn't even drive to him. So my point is the intuitive hit, the psychic hit was spot on. I messed it up because I speculated what I thought it actually meant. So sometimes we just have to say what we see. We have to read it. We just have to spit it out and just offer that. Like that alone is a gift. You don't have to feel like you have to then put it in this meaning context. That may not be what we're here to do. We just have to speak it, what we're seeing here. But we also don't want to force it. So if you're feeling like you're continuing to draw a blank, or there's something you're feeling like, I'm just feeling like there's something off about this. We don't want to just force it. We want to look back at the question. We may want to ask the querent something to clarify it, or it just may not be knowable to us at that time. And so we have to release ourselves to that process because, again, we are not analog Google. We are divining. We are speaking to the divine, and it is really not up to us a lot of the time. And we want to be honest. We definitely want to be honest, which means no sugarcoating. Now, we can be honest with great kindness and in compassion, but we don't want to change something because we're afraid of their reaction. And we just have to watch that. Finally, the way I read, so if you're doing a reading and then someone asks a follow-up question, the traditional advice has been to pull a clarifying card that hopefully makes the original reading make sense. But I find that actually causes more confusion than it helps. And I would rather you do another small mini reading with the updated question rather than just the clarifying card. So these are all things that, for those of you that are very new, you may be like, oh my God, this is a lot, but this is for you for later. I'm giving this to you for later. And you'll see it really show up as you're doing readings. So Brooke says, sometimes I find using past, present, future useful in future readings to establish we're on the right path and have past, present, right? But what reading is best to focus on the future? We're going to get into that. Yes, I agree with you that sometimes there are readings where we want to establish like a past, but to me, they're more succinct questions. For example, if someone's like, I really got out of a really bad relationship and now I'm ready for a new relationship, I do want to do a reading on like what were the actual dynamics of the past relationship, just to see, does my querent have a really good understanding of what happened? Or are they blaming them for things that maybe weren't theirs to carry? And we can talk about the lessons they learned. And then once we've done that, then we can do a reading just on the future piece. So let's get into through 6 steps for fluent tarot reading. Yeah, we're going to break the whole spreads. We're doing no spreads. And so that's the other thing is I often find that the over reliance of keywords for each card and spreads makes tarot more of a formulaic or algebraic equation than it is the art and the spiritual work of tarot. And what I mean by that is that, you know, you can follow a recipe that you found online and that's good. But I bet you also watched your grandmother cook, right? And she didn't have a recipe. And that recipe changed a little bit each time, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And if you were like, how do you make that, grandma? And she's like, well, I don't know, like a handful of this, a pinch of that, you taste it. And that's where I want us to get is that there's a feel to a reading. There's a muscle memory. So what I'm going to say is no spreads. Here's what we're going to do. What I'd like to see you do is if you're brand new, pick only one keyword per card, no more than one. And I know it's going to drive you crazy, but the point is that you have just one word to give you a sense of the gist of the feeling of the card. And that's it. Because what happens is when you over rely on keywords in the beginning, then you're keeping the reading in the left side of your brain, which is linguistic, logical, cause and effect. But the right side of your brain is spatial, symbolic, visual, intuitive, and psychic. And so my way of teaching here is kind of hobbling your left side of the brain, which you've been trained your whole life to use, in order to allow the right side of your brain to come up just a little more loudly. So we want one word per card. I tell people, get those little sticky notes, those little tiny like Post-it notes, put that one word, slap it on your card. And instead of pulling out your phone when you're in the grocery line or you're on hold, run through your deck. And then when you know that you've memorized that one word for that card, you pull the sticky. And if you do this within a week, you'll have 78 words for 78 cards. It can happen that quickly. Also, don't necessarily feel that you have to use all 78 cards all at once. Go ahead and break up your deck. So what I do is I begin with just the suit cards. So ace through 10 of one suit. And then when I feel like I've got a good feeling of it, I like add the other suits. Then I add the major arcana. Then I add the court cards. You can do readings with broken decks. You can do readings with very, very small numbers of cards from tarot, and it will still, crazily enough, answer the question. And then you can build your deck as you go. Don't feel like you have to use all 78 cards. Read for others first. And this is like, no one listens to this advice. I tell everyone this and everyone ignores me. So I know you're going to not do this, but here's why. That the hardest people to read for are going to be you and also the people closest to you. And the reason why is because you're too subjective. You care too much. You're too biased. And so what happens is people will be like, okay, I've been learning tarot for a month. I'm going to do a Celtic cross on myself. Boy, you've just set yourself up to not like really help you build confidence. So what I would say is, in order for us to get to that fluency, you have to do hundreds of readings. And it's best that you do them for anyone except for you or the people closest to you. And you can read about anything. You can read about the news. You can go on Reddit. You can go on any kind of like Dear Abby, and that person puts a question. Do 3 cards. Read for anyone or anything except you or those closest to you. And then what happens is you start getting a feel for how tarot wants to speak to you. And once you feel more comfortable, then you can start reading for yourself. Because what happens is that we'll often read for ourselves first, get totally overwhelmed and confused, and then go, I just suck. And then you put them away. They're in a shelf all dusty, and then you never pull them out again. And the reason why is I don't think people have been taught tarot in a way that really, really helps them become very strong and powerful very quickly. So I would also say no spreads. We're not going to do any spreads because I
Okay.
often find spreads are very limiting. It's like one position, one card, one position, one card. And that actually doesn't help newer readers. It makes it harder for new readers. So where I want you to be very pedantic on is not on the spread. I want you to be hyper pedantic and logical about the question. Because what happens is often people will go, so how's my day going to be today? And then they pull just one card. Oh, Queen of Cups. Well, what does that mean? I don't know. This sucks, right? And they put it away. So here's the thing. We need a really clear and succinct question. And don't pull any less than 3 cards. Because what we're going to do is we're going to read those cards all together like a graphic novel. Does that make sense, everybody? And we're going to do this all together.
Oh, no.
So let's talk about like your enemies. Like we said, self-consciousness is an enemy. Like if you're really self-conscious, it gets in the way. If you have anxiety that you're not resolving, then you'll be really nervous. If you're looking for perfectionism, that's all your ego getting in the way, right? And what are your friends? Improv, like spit it out. What's the first thing coming to you? Those are often those intuitive hits. The thing that comes first is often the right thing. Keep a loose grip. We're just looking at the gist of the information. We're not necessarily trying to get to perfection. I'm a big fan of ish. If we can get to ish, that's often good enough. And then your inner process, which is this my bias? Is this my trigger? Is this my opinion? Or is this like really coming through the cards? Really watching which voices is showing up. And that is really going to be helpful for that intuitive and very natural piece to come. So some things that are not your responsibility as a tarot reader. You don't have to read tarot for anyone, even if they ask you and they know you read tarot. That's your gift. You can give it to anybody else. You don't have to pass anyone's tests. If they're testing you, bye-bye. We don't need to play that game, right? You don't have to read all questions in all circumstances. You don't have to use tarot just to make someone feel better. You don't have to read tarot for exposure. You don't have to read tarot and fix their problem. You don't have to be 100% accurate or clear. And you don't have to change your reading to make them happy. So for those of us, and I speak for myself, I have codependent tendencies. I want everyone to be okay and happy. But if I'm being an honest tarot reader, that codependence is my bias and I have to really watch it, which is why I need to read for people I don't care about at first. Does that make sense, everyone? All right. So we're going to get in readings. And thank you, jennamatlin.com. That's how you find me. And let's be friends. Let's hang out. So I'm going to stop share and I'm going to move to us doing readings together. Is that okay? Have I lost anyone? Is everyone here? Everyone good? Perfect. Feeling ready? Feeling ready? Okay, great. Now, if anyone has a question, go ahead and put it now in the chat. It can be you or an example. It doesn't matter. And then we're going to get into it. And I'm going to show you what I mean from what I've said in our little thing here. Oh, also, let me close this and then I'm going to, oh, that's interesting. Will it let me just upload? Oh, that's interesting. For some reason, the webinar won't let me just upload the PDF, but I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you later, Michelle, so you'll have it. So let me get on my share screen with you guys. So this is my document camera. Can everybody see my table? Perfect. Let me open chat again. Where did my chat go? There it is. Does anyone have a question that we can use as an example? Okay. Corey, perfect example. Question. Will I go full-time in my business this year? That's a big question. And my question to you would be this, like a follow-up question would be like, what do you personally need in order to go full-time? What's hinging on that question? That cause and effect is where I want to read. Does that make sense? Samir, what is something that needs to be brought to my awareness right now? That is not a succinct question. That is like one of those really loosey-goosey questions. So I want a succinct question. And by that, I mean, am I going to buy a car this weekend? Or I'm looking at this one car. Should I buy it, or what's the advice around it? Okay, so Corey, you said to make enough money to leave my part-time job. Okay, so your question is, will I make enough money that will enable me to leave my part-time job and start my own business? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. So then let's do that one. Carolyn, I'm not going to do health readings within the webinar, just so you know, legally. You can always come get a reading with me. We can look at it. But for the ages of this, I want to stay a little on the safer side. Okay, so Corey, let's talk about that. Am I going to be able to financially make the moves I need? So what we're going to do is I'm going to use the full deck, and we're just going to pull 3 cards. And see, this is what I mean about a question, that often people will ask question A, but question A is really dependent on some really important factor in order for A to happen. So I always want to look at the important factor, which is the money piece for her, because that will then tell us what happens, right? So I'm going to shuffle my deck. And I'm going to pull 3 cards. We have 9 of Wands. And if you don't know what 9 of Wands means, great. We have 6 of Wands. And we have Queen of Swords. So what we want to do is we just want to look at the cards, look at the pictures. And that's what I mean, is that oftentimes people are so busy, like just, going after the key words. They're not even really looking at the cards. If I can bring this in. So here we have someone who looks like they're struggling, right? He's got a bandage on his head. He feels a little defensive. It's like rocky around him. There's like these kind of like wands are kind of behind him in a way that's limiting him. So if you knew nothing about this card and you just looked at the image, what would you say? What would you say from this card? What would be a word or a sentence? So you can put that in the chat. And then now we look at, so we're just going to read like a graphic novel. And now we look at this. Now this person is sitting on a horse. There is a laurel wreath here. There's a laurel wreath on his head. Everybody's looking at him. What kind of feeling do you get here? What kind of emotional tone do you get from just that picture? And you can put that in the chat. Great, victorious, riding high, noble, beautiful. And then the other one, weary, on guard, resilient, hardship, great, perfect. And then look at the final question, right? So we have someone who's like chilling, like she is sitting on her throne and she's looking right at you. Let me see if I can get these a little closer. Let me see if I can get this a little, so we can see the detail out there. Perfect. This is better. And you can also look at the spatial elements. So you have someone kind of standing in a way that looks, they're not in their strength. And then this feels very much in their strength. And now this person is sitting very comfortably and with a sword. Wonderful. So if you knew nothing about these three cards, you'd never seen them before, you could actually read the tarot for that question, right? So how would you pull that together in a reading? Is she going to make the money she needs in order to dump the part-time job and start the business, right? What do you guys think? What is this reading telling her? What is it saying? At first, you will, yada, yada, but then, ba, 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 and then finally, da, 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 right? It's truly that simple. So she's asking, she didn't ask for advice. She didn't say, how do I do it? She asked, will I? And so that's what I mean about deeply listening to the question and making a very, very succinct question, because she didn't ask for advice. This reading isn't necessarily giving advice. It's basically giving a prediction. So it says, at first, there could be a feeling of great overwhelm. And it may feel like it's a harder thing than you can actually do. But somehow you pull it off. You pull it off. You pull it off better than you even thought you could. And then finally, you are sitting in your strength, able to make some very intelligent and tactical choices for yourself. You're the queen. So that's the thing. We have to be careful. You have to listen to the question, because if you don't, then you may be actually reading on the wrong thing. Since the question didn't ask for advice, we don't necessarily lean into advice. That's part of that. So that's what I mean is we don't need a spread, but we need a very, very careful, succinct question. And when we do that, we can read three cards very easily and very quickly and very powerfully. You see what I mean? Is everyone good? Thumbs up. Everyone with me? Yeah? You feeling this? All right, cool.
So I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
Just, can we start a question with please advise?
It depends on what the question is.
Okay, I'll wait and see.
What's your question?
I'm just thinking sometimes people do want advice.
Yes, then we make it an advice-based question. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So we can look at readings, because I look at readings. Readings have a lot of different, like tarot is kind of a Swiss Army knife that we can do a predictive reading. We can do a diagnostic reading. Like, what is the problem here? I don't understand, right? Or like, how do I, and that is a advice or prescriptive reading that tarot can do a lot of different things once we're clear on what we're asking it to do. It's like a little calculator. The data that goes in informs the clarity of the data coming out. And especially for newer readers, this is the way to do it. So does someone have another question?
Sure. It's asking for advice. Let me type it in.
So ace cards, they actually do have a lot of action, and I see them in a lot of different ways. They're really seen as like the rewards or gifts of the purest suit. So hopefully one may come up and then we can talk about it. If there's not one right answer. Do I have to let go of my husband? Oh, Jenny. What does it mean to let go? Do you want to give me more details on that? So basically like divorcing, is that what you're asking? Okay. I feel like there's probably a deeper reason why you want the divorce. And is there a reason why you want to divorce him in particular? Like, is there something that's triggering the divorce that you're like, basically, is he going to get sober? Right? To me, that would be the question I would look at, because that would be, as an example, the thing that would then kick off your effect to his cause. Does that make sense, everybody? So when we do these very short readings, which is really about getting to fluency and comfort, like trying to get to the clarity of a question, so important. Is there anything deeper, Jenny, than that? Or is it like a more complicated situation?
Can I just speak to it? Would that be easier?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah. It's basically like a substance abuse issue, which is, it's like I don't want to, but I'm like, is that just something that's not going to ever end and I just have to move on? Or is it worth kind of like moving on separately, but not separating, if that makes sense?
Okay.
Like letting him do his own journey and have him meet me when he's ready, or is it time to move on, kind of thing?
Yeah. Okay. So that's really the question. Do you see, like, we do the work to kind of get a little closer to what's the actual, what I call, those of you who may be massage therapists, I'm like, there's like the knot, and once we hit the knot, then this is the thing that's causing all these other things, right? So that's what I want to look at. So let's do. Will Jenny's husband get to a place of sobriety in time to save the marriage? That's a very succinct and very clear question. And then later we can follow it up, like, depending on what shows up, then it can be like, well, what's the advice to maybe help him, or what does he need? Like, we don't need to just ask one, but what we want is a very clear-cut question for the 3 cards to be able to answer. And so here's what we have. We have the Hermit. So just looking at the pictures and the feeling and the tone. We have Death. And we have 8 of Wands. So does anyone want to take a stab or put it in the chat? Just looking at these 3 cards. What do you feel when you look at it? Where does your eye take you? That's another technique. Your psychic mind is going to use the symbols in the cards to give you information. And so for me, I immediately noticed this guy here. And that was like, to me, the answer is probably not, right? And 8 of Wands, I'm looking at all of these sticks, kind of like, there's a heaviness, Jenny. Yeah, great way of putting it. A feeling of, there's no, we're not seeing freedom and happiness. We're feeling like a dark feeling. So I would say at this time, right now, it does not, unfortunately, I'm not seeing him choosing to come into full recovery soon enough. But like I said, the prediction is a future, not the future. So maybe if he was sitting down with me and I told him this, maybe that would be the thing he needed to hear in order to get serious. So sometimes tarot readings can act as like wake-up calls that then we can use our free will to shift and impact upon. Meg, I'm not doing keywords. You're getting ahead of us, girl. We're just looking at the images and answering the question. And we didn't ask, is she going to move on? We were really asking about him and his recovery. So we could see Eight of Wands as you're getting all these messages, but you're ignoring them. You're turned away from them. You're looking away. You're isolating yourself. Everybody knows what a hermit means. You're isolating yourself. You're not coming back to your family. That there's a real stubbornness in this that feels very, very difficult. Yeah, he's in hermit mode, Shamina. So do you see what I mean? That when we really do the work to make a really, really powerful question, rather than just like a namby-pamby, how's like my life gonna be though? And you're like, what? Like, oh my God, that's so complicated. We can really use 3 cards and really get to an incredible amount of information. So I think we're coming up on time, right? We only had an hour, lunchy hour-ish. Okay.
Yeah, usually, yeah.
So can we stay to do one more very quickly? And then is that okay? Or should we finish up? What do you think? Do you need to go?
Is that okay with everybody? Or, okay,
Like 5 more minutes? And then also,
Awesome.
if you have some final questions, like put them in the chat now, so then we can kind of get through it real quick. One more says, okay, there was one that was up here. Can someone piggyback on a question? I don't know what you exactly mean by that. So, we had a question before I want to come back up to. Should I say yes to Jenny's study group this week? So I'm careful with the word should, because that to me takes your kind of free will away. So to me, why don't you know whether you want to or not? Like, what's below the should? What does that actually mean? Does that make sense what I'm asking, guys? Like, what does it mean like you should?
Yes, what is the best, what is in my best interest? That's why I was saying, can we start something with please advise on the wisdom regarding saying yes to an invitation?
Mm. Oh, so MJ says, would it be beneficial? Would that be a good way to do
Yes.
that question?
Yes, thank you, MJ.
Perfect. Yes, thank you, MJ. So would it be beneficial to go to this study group? Let's take a look. Okay, so this is going to be the final reading.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have 7 of Pentacles. We have Ace of Pentacles. Oh, there's an ace. And we have the Emperor. So if we don't know any of the keywords and we're just really looking at the cards and noticing what are the symbols that we see. What's the vibe you guys are getting here? Like what are we seeing here? Give me a word for this card. Give me a word for this card. Give me a word for this card in the chat. So 7 of Pentacles, some people are seeing growth. She'll gain, effort pays off. Yeah, but you know what's interesting? Here's what I see too. My eyes took me actually to the face. And that's someone who's not sure if it's going to actually be beneficial. Like, is the time and effort I'm going to be put in, is it going to be worth it to me in some way? And then we get Ace of Pentacles, right? So they're kind of similar. So to me, as an ace, this is yes. This is a reward, like you're being handed a coin. You're being handed something past this door. And that something positions you What do you guys think of the emperor? What do you feel here with the emperor? Yeah, Ace of Pentacles, fruitful. He looks gruff. Yeah, he does. So maybe she'll be challenged at this place or feel, I don't know if this is exactly for me, but it is kind of helpful. Looks mean, but strong. Yeah, he does look a little mean. Yeah, authority. So how would you guys pull this together into a sentence for her? Will this be beneficial? What's the answer? Will this be beneficial? Yeah. Yeah, it will. Maybe you're not so sure if it will be, but you're going to be pleasantly surprised by what shows up. But manage your expectations in terms of all the new things you're going to learn or not. That there'll be some things, but it's not going to be like mind-blowing. That gruffness kind of moderates that for me. There's a lesson that will be empowering. That's a good way of seeing it possibly too, with the emperor there, for sure. Or this thing unlocks the ability to become the emperor in some way. You get past the garden gates and you go from just being this like peasant to being like a leader. We can also look at the progression, and that gives us information too. The emperor is holding the traditional, like the scepter of office and then like a globe. I think this is like a traditional, like symbols of ruling. Does anyone see anything else? Right. Who said blue skies ahead? Yeah, great. Yeah, it's all blue skies. It feels pretty good, right? And of course, we can get into layers and layers and layers. But for today, I think this is a really good start. So I'm going to stop my share and kind of go through some final questions. Has this been helpful for everybody? Like kind of a new way to kind of have a new relationship with tarot? Perfect. So I think there were some final questions. Her efforts will bring her benefit and knowledge. Great, Susan. Yep. See, you guys are all readers. You're all pros already. You see what I mean? Like sometimes we can overthink. And when you overthink, it actually makes it more complicated than it really needs to be. Crazy, right? Was there a question someone asked about? So if you're a new reader, yes, I do recommend that you get something like classic. This is why I'm using this deck, classic tarot, which is like a Rider-Waite-Smith, because all the newer decks are basically based off of this system. So if you learn off of this system, then you'll be able to translate that to a bunch of other decks. Was there any other questions? Did I miss anything?
Barbara, who did the classic tarot that you held up?
Oh yeah, this is Barbara Moore from Llewellyn, but any Rider-Waite-Smith deck is going to be a good one. But yeah, sometimes we find ones that are pretty and then we struggle with like just getting them to really like click for us. So any kind of Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Yeah, I don't, when it comes to this kind of stuff, physical proximity is completely irrelevant. Now, and because psychic ability doesn't require physical proximity. We're working out of space-time. So yeah, you read about Ukraine, read about Russia, read about China, like whatever, come up with 100 succinct questions and do three to five 3-card spreads a day. And I guarantee you're going to get very good very quickly. And that is where you get confidence. And then from there, you just kind of grow. Can you read for those who have passed? Absolutely. Half my work is in mediumship, and I use tarot for that all the time. You can read tarot for past lives. You can read tarot for future lives. Again, tarot is a Swiss Army knife. It's capable of far more than I think what most people think it is. Any final questions before I let you guys all run off to the rest of your day?
Awesome. This was so cool. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you. Thanks again. And everyone, you can connect with me, Jenna Matlin.
Thank you.
I put some links in here, you know, some upcoming webinars and things in our Facebook group, and we'll follow up with Jenna's presentation, how to get in touch with Jenna in an email and also on the Facebook group. So thank you for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Happy reading.
Bye.